Hello, I'm Don Scott. For more than a decade, I served as the Director of Sustainability for the National Biodiesel Board. In that time, we grew volume production by almost tenfold, from 350 million gallons in 2006 to nearly 3 billion gallons in 2016. The key to that volume expansion was public policy, benchmarked on carbon reduction. My colleagues and I developed the data proving that biodiesel can reduce up to 25 million tons a year compared to fossil fuel. The science of life cycle analysis and carbon accounting was key to making this business possible. I'd like to share some perspective of what we learned to help guide additional carbon reduction and business development beyond biodiesel and applying to all biomass and land management in general. There's scientific consensus that we have to reduce emissions from fossil carbon, and we need to foster regenerative practices in agriculture and forestry in order to soak up and store some of the fossil carbon that is already overheating our climate. There's a growing majority of political leaders that want to enact sweeping policy to reduce carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The upcoming election could very well add momentum to those efforts. However, no matter which party controls the federal government, any effective policy will have to be bipartisan to some degree. Senators from red states and middle America will have to be represented in the compromise. While the strongest advocates for climate policy may be Democrats representing urban and coastal constituents, farmers and forest managers will have to be at the table. Discussions are happening about the development of low-carbon fuel standards, and the Citizens Climate Lobby continues to gain momentum for their carbon fee and dividend model. There remains much uncertainty about what shapes these policies might take, but there are common data elements that will be required for any market-based policies. One data element is the social cost of carbon. There's already a lot of scientific literature about the value of reducing carbon emissions. Obama's EPA wanted biomass-based diesel to deliver a ton of carbon reduction for around $40. We were able to show that we can reduce a ton of carbon for around $60 by paying slightly more for biodiesel than the petroleum diesel it replaces. That wasn't good enough for EPA to use their discretion to increase volumes under the RFS, but many environmental NGOs support a cost of carbon in excess of $100 per ton. In that scenario, a lot of more renewable options become more attractive. California is paying up to $200 per ton for carbon reductions under the LCFS. This illustrates their enthusiasm for a policy that not only reduces emissions, but transforms transportation and creates impetus for electric vehicles. Even Trump's EPA administrator said that carbon should be worth $1 per ton. While policy advocates struggle to determine what citizens should pay for carbon reduction, industry and land managers should begin figuring out what it costs them to reduce or store carbon emissions. This is what we did for biodiesel. This is how we quantified that the renewable fuel standard was a reasonable bargain when it comes to reducing emissions and adding energy security and economic benefits. Farmers and land managers should be working right now toward quantifying how much carbon they can store in soil and long-standing biomass like forests. Land managers need to understand the effectiveness of tools like reduced tillage and cover crops. They need to be able to measure carbon sequestration, and they need to be able to determine the cost of modifying their operations to increase carbon storage and reduce life cycle emissions. Carbon management is a geophysical problem. We can't tackle this problem without addressing the landscape where biogenic carbon is stored and recycled. Farmers and foresters must engage in this issue because they control significant portions of land area. If they aren't at the table, they will be lumped in with industry, perceived as adding to atmospheric carbon, and investment will fall away with those industries withering. Farmers and foresters need to engage in these discussions with data, quantifying what they can do and how much they need to be paid to do it. Conditions vary, but some farmers could sequester 1 ton per acre by increasing soil carbon by 0.25%. Even at the ridiculously low price of $1 per ton, with 380 million acres of managed farmland in the U.S., there could be significant revenues to be gained. I point out this conservative estimate only to prove there is a business case for engaging in this work. The real reason, of course, is the urgent need for carbon management and the tremendous potential to foster a regenerative bioeconomy. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for making this conference a success.